Hello and welcome to part 2 of The Witcher on the Doctors Who Read Stuff. My name is Chris.
I'm Chip.
So,
And I'm Brian.
last time we talked part 1 of this story, and again, this is part 1 of the short story entitled The Witcher about The Witcher. It's a little confusing. But let's see. Last time, Geralt went to Temeria, met a king who slept with his sister. Their child, who was the victim of a curse, became a striga. 7 years after that happened, she crawled out of the sarcophagus and started killing townspeople and the king's subjects. The Witcher came in to try to collect some coin and kill this thing, but the king would like his daughter restored and not slain.
So he wants
Right.
to break the curse rather than kill her,
Yeah,
if
so
possible.
that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at. And again, just to recap, we are in Temeria, in the city of Vizima, and our good King Foltest is basically bankrolling Geralt's attempt for 3,000 Orin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds,
Yeah.
yeah.
It does.
Sounds like a lot of money. Probably a high
Well,
risk of death,
I kind
though.
of feel like that's most of the Witcher's life, so
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Well, he said that, if it wasn't worth 1,000 to the other Witcher, then, don't talk to me unless
yeah.
it's for 3,000 or
Yeah.
whatever the king was
So
offering.
today
So,
we're picking up with Geralt arriving or being in the palace. And earlier they made comment that after this happened and the striga started coming out of the sarcophagus, King Foltest moved out of that palace and built another one on the other side of town just to get away. So, yeah.
Seems like the easier path to take,
So,
maybe.
why somebody needs to refresh my memory here, because I watched the Netflix episode last night and I can't remember what happened in the book. But why in the book, in this story, is Geralt using the magnate as bait?
well, Ostrid came up to him so Geralt went to the palace, kind of got his stuff ready. Didn't he drink his
His vials,
Drink his
yeah.
potion to
vials,
heighten
yeah.
his senses? Yeah, then Ostrich showed up. Page
Oh,
20,
that's right.
26.
Yeah.
So Ostrich showed up to basically confront him, and
Because it
he's
would
like,
be easier to overthrow the king if this
"What would you say?"
continued. Yeah. Okay. I remember
Yeah,
now.
Yep.
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
because then yeah,
And I thought that was pretty funny how the Witcher denied the money. It
Yeah.
was just like whatever, and then he knocked him out and then tied him up. And it was like,
yeah,
oh, I'll let you loose.
Yeah.
Don't worry
yeah.
about
Well,
that.
yeah, because I mean, Ostrich
Right.
basically
Yeah.
threatened him, didn't he? And Geralt was like, "You better leave, Lord Ostrich.
Mm-hmm.
It's growing dark." And
Yep.
Ostrich stepped back and he drew his sword and he said, "You asked for this, sorcerer. I'll kill you. Your tricks won't help you. I carry a turtle storm stone." And then basically
Uh,
the next scene, Ostrich regaining his
Yeah.
consciousness and is all tied up and doesn't realize that Geralt's
But
even there.
let's for a minute just go
So
back to the vial that he took, and you know, in if you've watched the show or you're familiar with the games or anything like that, you know that he's got these vials that basically enhance his abilities.
are they like elementic
Kind of, yeah.
metals? Or are they? It seems similar to
But
Mistborn a little bit that
the
way.
interesting thing that the book mentioned when he took this vial, and it said, for anyone who had not been introduced to it since childhood, it would be lethal poison. Which gives you an idea
Hmm.
that he was set on this path while he was a child. Which is
good point.
kind of a bummer.
Lifelong skill.
Or maybe it's not. Maybe he gets off on it. I don't know. But it just seems like, ugh.
Is it like iocane powder?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that. I thought
Yeah.
that too. Good callback.
But yeah, so
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too because they kind of talked about the sentence or how his
yep,
senses were heightened, where his eyes dilated, he could see so much in the dark, he could hear, he could. I assume it gives him strength and speed and just kind of any
yeah,
reflexive actions that he can. He's much quicker than
hmm
he was before, and I don't know if I don't recall if there's any sort of a hangover when it wears off. It
you'd
seems like there
think.
should be, but.
But anyway,
Mhm.
striga. Let's talk about the striga.
I didn't like the striga in the show. I get sick of zombie looking monsters. It just seems too cheap and easy. I wanted something more of like a hybrid werewolf monstrosity thing that looked more like the book, and we're reviewing the
Exactly.
book,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the show. So I like the description in the book, and that's what I saw was something more akin to a
hmm
werewolf type creature as opposed to a zombie-ish
I would
corpse-like
agree.
creature that we
Yep.
saw on the show.
And I think what Sapkowski does very well here, as the striga comes out of the sarcophagus and engages in battle with Geralt, is like he does a great job of like narrating a battle scene.
Hmm.
I mean, it's
Yeah, because he does a good job kind of going back and forth with the actions of each combatant, if you
yeah,
will.
and it's really, sorry, I'm moving away from the mic a little bit. It's and this is where, like, he introduces things like there's a lot of focus on movement. He's
Hmm.
like they make a point, or he makes a point to call out that Geralt is being careful not to move fast and then to move slow and not to keep his movements. And then this is a quote from the book later on: taking care that the movement of his sword was not in rhythm with his steps. So I mean, there's a, I don't know if it's something specific to like the art of combat for The Witcher or things like that, but or the art of fighting monsters, but it seems like that intentional aversion to any sort of sustained rhythm is bad.
Yeah, yeah, because there's another line in here on page 31 of the paperback version where it says by slowing and quickening his movements, he distracted the striga, making it difficult for her to leap. So
Yeah,
there is a purpose in what he's doing, and like I said, yeah, like you said, Sapkowski does a good job kind of building this scene. So I mean, it
it
was easy
was.
to
Yeah, yeah.
visualize to me.
Like, and let's go back to Mistborn here real quick. I mean, there were a lot of the battle scenes. I was just like, it was hard for me to follow what was going on because there was so much information packed into it. This is more like it's
Yeah,
light on the exposition, but it's almost like I don't really know how to explain it, but
to me it doesn't get very verbose, that it's very much matter of fact that the Witcher smiled the wit maliciously. His first attempt had failed. Silver was fatal to the striga. There was a chance, but it was just kind of short, quick sentences, but they did a good job of describing stuff.
yeah, yeah. And there was that kind of like the final quote unquote confrontation where he managed to scare the striga away. That was kind of interesting too. It almost felt like it was magic.
Hmm.
Like they said, to become physically one with his opponent, to reach the underlayers of concentrated will which permeated the striga. So it's almost like he knows a way to kind of get inside, or do something, right? I don't know.
That's like you can almost get inside the monster's head. I don't know if that's something that the vial gives him as well, like almost like a like a link between him and the adversary.
Right, yeah. But that was pretty interesting. And I don't know if we covered this in the first or in the last episode or not, but in order to break this curse, he basically has to prevent the striga from returning to the sarcophagus until the cock crows the third time the cock crows or something like that, right?
Yeah, until like daybreak, but
Yeah.
like you can never count on the first cock crow of the morning to actually be at daybreak. Usually it's before. It was something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the third time you hear the cock crow, you know it's daybreak. So he essentially has to play beat the clock, where he's just like delaying this as long as possible, knowing that it's not necessarily a situation where he has to defeat her. He just has to outlast her until
Right.
morning.
Right. Yeah. And I know and we have to be careful because we're not reviewing the Netflix show, but I know his vials break during the battle. So he's like, oh shoot, I have to do this while my vials are wearing out. Mm-hmm. And I don't did that.
Well, in the book, they did say that he knew his vials were
Okay.
getting low, and so that's when he had to go back and he actually found the sarcophagus.
Yeah, is that where
Sarcophagi.
he basically lied in it and then pulled the top of it over and occupied it so she couldn't
Yeah.
get back in?
Like he did
Yep.
didn't he do like a sign to like
Because didn't
seal
he?
it?
He did some
Yeah.
sort of thing to seal it,
Yep.
didn't he? Yeah.
Yep.
And then upon coming out, and I thought this was a cool twist, right? Upon like when he came out and it was daybreak and he sees like this little 14-year-old girl laying there, he walks over it, but she's still got like the striga hand, and he touches her and he gets his throat slashed open basically.
She swiped it.
Yeah,
Then doesn't he bite
Yeah.
her?
before he passes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
That's like the old saying of what is journalism. It's not news to say dog bites man, but it's something to say Witcher bites
yeah,
Striga.
Yeah, you should
Yeah.
have some newspapers printed up with that headline, I think. So,
There you go.
and then I don't know
Which
if okay, yeah, it was the Castellan that when he wakes up, the Castellan is there. It says, "Lie still, Witcher. Lie, do not move. Your swords are
Yep.
safe." All this stuff. He's been out for 2 days. Blah blah blah. The princess is like a princess, thin and somewhat dull-witted. She weeps incessantly and wets her bed, but Foltest says this will change. So, ultimately, he succeeded, right? He survived. She survived. I'm guessing he's getting his 3,000 Orin. So,
But I kind of like where this ends up because it gives you a couple pieces as to where this could go. You know, sometimes you read these stories about these wandering travelers and what they do, and it's like, okay, well, clearly now he has either an income or he has like a whole bunch of money on him. So he has money and he can travel places. Number two, he's coming off of a debilitating neck injury. How is this going to play out in future stories?
Yep.
So it's kind of like, again, this is the introduction of The Witcher. So you kind of get this backstory, like almost like we knew he was going to survive. This was just looking back on it. But apparently there are important pieces
so I
into
think
what's to
there
come.
are two of these 2 books that are the short stories, and then I think there are maybe 3 or 4 full-length novels. And that, as far as like the written works, that's all there is from Sapkowski. So, yeah. And I do know that the games were not adapted from the novels. They take place after the novels. But as we're finding out, the Netflix series is pulling from, so far, this book at least.
Yeah, I've read I think I've read the next 1 or 2 stories in it, and they're they've hit on a couple of them in this series. So in the 8 episodes
Yeah.
of it, I think, and there's at least two other that are told from stories I've read in the book that we've got right now. So
Well, and then next time we'll be looking at the next story, which is, if I,
Witcher is.
it's not going to be called The Witcher anymore. So chapter 2 is The Voice of
good
Reason,
point.
which is what I believe to be a,
that's kind of like the
Yeah.
interlude. I
and
think it's
then
a
The
grain
Grain
of
of Truth
truth
is the next short story. So we'll be
Mhm.
able to say A Grain of Truth instead
Yeah.
of we're covering The Witcher from The Witcher, which is all sorts of confusing. So anyway, yeah.
They call him the Witcher. Witcher.
Witcher. And
Yeah.
one thing that I did not see was at no point in this short story did Geralt say, fuck.
No. Yeah, usually
I
it's a
did
bad
wonder if that was
situation.
coming.
He kind of grunts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Henry Cavill's pretty good for the
Oh
role.
man,
so.
he is. And I know he's an avid gamer, and he was like,
Mhm.
yes, I want this role.
Yeah.
So I was so excited.
Because I was never. Yeah, and I didn't dislike him as Superman. He was fine, but I think this is something that you can tell he's having fun.
Yeah.
Playing this part.
I think
so.
he's a great Superman. I just think the script he was given wasn't up to par.
No, and it was a Zack Snyder film.
Right.
So
Yeah. But
which
anyway,
Anyway.
next week, more Witcher. Right?
sweet.
Grain of truth to
Grain
that
of
statement.
truth. We'll see if he heals from his neck injury.
I hope
Me
so.
too. Neck injuries suck.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please hit the like button and the subscribe button below. And we'll be back with you next week with A Grain of Truth.
Aloe.